Get free tech advice for your business from O2 Gurus. Search O2 Business for more. Hey guys, welcome to BTech. I'm Basil and this is my Huawei Honor 6 review. Huawei, who are they? Huawei is a Chinese manufacturer. They were established in the 1980s and they started making telephony bits for other people. Then they decided they'd make phones and tablets for other people, and finally what we have today is a Huawei that makes their own smartphones and tablets. What phones? Well, we've seen the skinny Ascend P7 and the brilliant Ascend Mate 7. Check out our videos if you haven't already seen them. But now they've launched another sub-brand, Honor. So what's Honor? Honor is, well, like we said, Huawei's other sub-brand. Weirdly, they don't want it to be associated with Ascend, even though it says on the back made by Huawei and it runs the same Emotion UI. Still, Honor, if the Honor 6 is anything to go by, dictates you're going to get a relatively flagship spec and a great value for money. The Honor 6 looks like a blown up iPhone 5S, but it shouldn't be cast off as a cheap clone. It has 3 GB of RAM, an octo-core processor, and it costs, like we said, just £249. As far as the design goes, it's got rounded corners and almost smartphone by numbers styling. The simple, clean glass front and back do feel premium for the £249 asking price, but it does attract fingerprints like nobody's business, especially in black. At 7.5mm thick, it isn't particularly thin, it isn't particularly thick. It's also 130 grams, which isn't particularly light or particularly heavy. Same can be said of the screen, 5 inches, not too big or too small, but if you do have smaller hands, it is still much bigger than an iPhone 5S if that's what you're coming from, so check one out before you buy one. The ports are really typical, a headphone jack at the top and SD card slot to the right, and down at the base is a micro USB port. On the flip side, you've got a 13 megapixel rear facing camera, and on the front is a front facing 5 megapixel camera, as well as that full HD display. Speaking of, with its IPS technology, it gets a big thumbs up from us. At 5 inches, it's big enough for your movies and your games, and the quality is very good too. 445 pixels per inch may not be LGG3 levels of sharp, but it definitely does the job, sporting greater pixel density than either of the 2 latest iPhones. Good colors paired with good viewing angles just come together to round this experience off nicely and make the screen look great. As for what's inside the screen, Emotion UI, which is Huawei's user interface, is less of a high point. On the one hand, it's amazing, customizable, fun, and less clunky than its predecessor version 2.0. On the other, it's quite locked down and it's a bit buggy. It even tries and stops you installing custom launchers. But we'll start with the good. It looks very clean and there are some awesome themes to download. You can also personalize it to the nines with custom transitions, and you can also swap out lock screens from one theme and combine them with an apps tray from another theme. That said, it's still a skin that sits on top of Android 4.4, so any Android purists out there may well resent it. If you do, it almost feels like you have to hack another launcher on just to get it running, like Google Now Launcher for example, for a more stock experience. Why? Well, you have to dig into the settings and faff about with various bits. It won't just let you install another launcher and run it, like you'd expect from any Android phone. Unfortunately, it can also bug out here and there. Lock screens, for example, can, well, just not unlock if you install certain themes. Like we said, you can play around, swap out themes, one theme for another, but if you are going to lock down your experience so heavily, Huawei, it'd be worth making sure it doesn't bug out with fundamental features like unlocking your phone. Still, it's a definite improvement over its predecessor and will be perfect for casual users, especially given how pretty a lot of the themes look. As for Android purists, you may want to steer clear for the time being, or find a way to flash a stock Android ROM on here. So how does the camera fare? Well, you've got that 13 megapixel rear facing camera that can record video up to full HD, and that 5 megapixel front facing camera capable of shooting up to 720p. Fairly good performance from both. You don't have any manual modes like you do on Lumia cameras or HTC cameras, for example, which is a bit of a shame, but fundamentally it's a decent user interface that gives you a few bits to play with here and there. As far as low light goes, it's pretty mediocre performance, to be honest, from that 13 megapixel snapper that is. That said, there is a dual LED flash around the back which really does help things along, as long as you don't mind a slightly washed out picture. Details still fair, and in good lighting conditions you can get some pretty stonking shots. Same can be said of the front facing camera, decent detail in good light, not so great in low light. There is also a beauty mode for either camera that can make you just look positively alien. Still fun to have, especially for teenagers who are looking at a more affordable flagship quality phone. How about the rest of the multimedia features on the Honor 6? Well, the loudspeaker around the back, it's really easy to cover up. Produces decent volume when it's exposed, but even when this thing is on a surface, it is muffled, so a little bit of a shame there. Videos look great on the full HD display. 5 inches is a very good canvas on which to view them on, and of course running Google, you've got access to loads of applications, whether you want to store your own movies on here or stream them from services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, or indeed BBC iPlayer if you're here in the UK. It's a good size for gaming too. While it might not be quite as powerful as some of the top level flagships, it'll still play any game you throw at it. In addition to that, like we said, that screen looks absolutely great. Just plug in some cans in fear of covering up that speaker around the back. When it comes to connections, the only thing missing is an IR blaster. This thing has Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi Direct, GPS, Bluetooth 4.0, and like we may have said earlier, Cat 6 LTE, which puts its internet browsing speeds up there with the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. Very impressive, especially for a £249 device. With 3GB of RAM and a 1.7 GHz octo-core Kirin processor, it's a Kirin 920, you get some great performance. Again, it doesn't benchmark the best out there, but for that price you really aren't going to do any better anywhere else. Available in either 16 or 32GB variants and expandable by micro SD card. Last thing to talk about really is that battery. 3100 milliamps for a 5-inch screen device is just stellar, especially one that costs this much. What you can expect from the Huawei Honor 6 therefore is all-day battery, if not 2-day batteries for light to moderate users. What's more, you get that great screen, a fair user interface experience. Even if it is slightly nondescript design, it does feel premium, and ultimately a great performer as far as multimedia goes, with movies and music and everything just coming across very well, as long as you remember to plug in your own headphones. All of the negatives really are outweighed by that value. We can't think of a much better way to spend 249 quid. So if you are in the market for a great value phone with flagship spec, the Huawei Honor 6 should definitely be a consideration for you.